Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. The US is providing Ukraine with more intelligence to help it target Russia's energy sites. We'll have more on that in just a moment. But first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. The Polish Foreign Ministry warns citizens against going to danger zones as Israel arrests members of the Global Sumud Flotilla.
It's war.
Russia ramps up its hybrid operations in the Baltic region. And snow has covered the Polish Tatras mountain range. The Global Sumud Flotilla won't reach Gaza. Its vessels have been intercepted by Israeli soldiers, and activists who tried to break the naval blockade will await now deportation from Israel. I have no prisoners to exchange, says Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski, who urged Poles to avoid travelling to danger zones. Paweł Trzaskowski has this report.
Israeli forces are detaining crew members of vessels belonging to the Global Sumud Flotilla, an initiative with members from over 40 countries carrying humanitarian aid to Gaza. The boats were stopped in international waters. Among the detainees were Polish nationals, including an MP of the ruling coalition, Franciszek Sterczewski.
If you are seeing this video, it means I've been kidnapped by the Israeli occupational forces in international waters, as I was carrying out the humanitarian mission of the Global Sumud Flotilla. I am urging you to bring up my case with the Polish authorities.
The Polish authorities have taken consular action, and Israel says the detainees will eventually be deported. But the Polish Foreign Ministry discourages any future attempts to reach Gaza.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has repeatedly appealed not to travel to certain regions of the world. There are countries such as Iran, Belarus, and Russia that simply take Western citizens hostage. I will be blunt with those who would like to disregard our recommendations. I have no hostages to exchange. You are traveling at your own risk.
Parts of the flotilla, which consists of over 40 vessels, are still reported to be heading to Gaza, with the aim of raising awareness of the situation in the territory.
They're struggling, they're trying, they're mobilized protests all over the world.
Wednesday's blockade sparked new protests in numerous countries. In Italy, thousands took to the streets to oppose Israel's actions, which a United Nations Commission has called a genocide.
The time has come. We are seeing that the people are now doing what governments should be doing.
Protests are expected to intensify as the second anniversary of Hamas's October the 7th attacks draws near. This invasion of Israeli territory started the Gaza war. Currently, around 100 people are reported to be killed in Gaza every day due to Israel's military operation. Others die of hunger or lack of medical care, according to the UN agency that provides assistance to Palestinian refugees. Paweł Trzaskowski for TVP World.
Donald Trump's administration appears to be ramping up support for Ukraine's defense against Russia. The US has reportedly started sharing intelligence with Kyiv to assist in strikes deep into Russian territory. For more on this, I'm joined now by our correspondent, Alex Kadier in Kyiv. Alex, good evening. So how significant is this move, and what has the reaction been in Kyiv?
Good evening, Maciej. Well, it is a very significant move. If you think back to the spring of 2024, Joe Biden, then the US president, said to the Ukrainian side that they should not be targeting oil refineries deep in Russia. Now, we know that since President Trump became the US leader, Ukraine has been using its own weapons to target these refineries to hurt Russia's war economy and its ability to finance its invasion of this country. So not only is it a departure from US policy of the Biden era, it is also a huge shift from President Trump's position back in February, accusing Ukraine of gambling with World War III, having no cards, and that fateful bust-up in the Oval Office between President Zelensky, J.D. Vance, and the US President Donald Trump. Now, of course, this intelligence sharing, we understand, is actually in preparatory phases. The US president telling its intelligence agencies to prepare to share intelligence with Ukraine. Now, what does that mean concretely? We know that Ukraine is already striking deep into Russian territory, but it would help the Ukrainians better map their strike routes, better map air defences in Russia and better target those oil refineries deep in the country, because for now the intelligence sharing would be just about oil refineries, pipelines and power plants. There is, of course, one big question left about Tomahawk missiles and Ukraine securing more support from the US. We heard from President Zelensky in Copenhagen with those European leaders. He was asked if Ukraine is doing more to get US support. This was his answer.
We do our best to have United States on our side. What can I say? Politically, diplomatically, and of course on the battlefield. On the battlefield, our soldiers, they're heroic people, and they have to stand and not make steps back. It's very difficult. It's very painful. It's a big tragedy, this war. But to show our strong position, it has big influence, really, on reality, which is in the United States.
So for the Ukrainian side, it's also about busting those Russian narratives of military dominance from the Russian side, which has not borne out on the battlefield. The Russian offensive has significantly slowed down in September, not showing a position of strength from the Russian side. President Zelensky was also asked, do you think you will get those long-range Tomahawk missiles targeting deep into Russia, bought by NATO allies, provided by the US? The Ukrainian leader simply saying, we will see. Nevertheless, those reports that US intelligence will be shared with Ukraine to help with the strikes, whether or not US weapons will be shared, time will tell. Back to you.
That was Alex Kedier reporting from Kyiv. Thank you very much, Alex, and stay safe. We're in a new type of war, says Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, commenting on recent Russian hybrid activity in Europe. Some of Moscow's vessels have been spotted circulating close to a Polish pipeline near the port city of Szczecin. Kazimierz Łysiak has more on the Russian threat in the Baltic region.
We have another incident now close to Szczecin port. 2 days ago it was an incident close to our Baltic platform and our pipeline. Both are Russian vessels. And in fact, we have a new incidents in our region, I mean Baltic Sea, every single week.
The Polish Interior Ministry confirmed on Thursday that a Russian civilian vessel sailed close to a gas pipeline and left immediately when called out on the radio by the Coast Guard.
Russian security services are looking for more and more ways to target and destabilize Poland and other EU states and to sow disagreement inside our country.
This is yet another case of Russia testing Europe's patience in recent weeks, mostly with drones flying over critical infrastructure in several countries. And Poland says the continent needs to realize the gravity of the situation.
Some of us, we like this definition, like full-scale aggression or incidents or provocation. No, it's war. A new type of war, very complex, but it's war.
Analysts point to several reasons why Russia sets off these provocations. One is testing the waters.
Both sides are constantly adjusting. Russians are coming up with the new ways of testing us, while we have to continue adjusting our standard operating procedures.
And the other is sowing chaos and panic in European societies, all part of Russian leader Vladimir Putin's plan aimed at discouraging the continent from backing Ukraine.
He wants us to talk about these issues. He wants that our societies will be, let's say, less supportive towards Ukraine.
But politically, that plan seems to have the opposite effect. At the informal summit in Copenhagen, European leaders not only backed Ukraine once again, but also backed the creation of the so-called drone wall, counter-drone measures to be set up across the continent in cooperation with Kyiv. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
Hungary blocking Ukraine's EU accession was the main focal point of the European Political Community Summit in Copenhagen on Thursday. Despite lengthy talks between Europe's 50 leaders on how to support Kyiv, The divisions are still visible. And so we are joined now live from the Danish capital by our EU correspondent Angela Skujins. Good evening, Angela. Why did Viktor Orban's bloc take up so much space today?
Yes, so it all started earlier this morning when the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban openly clashed with the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk regarding Russia. Now, this happened as both leaders were arriving at the European Political Community Summit in the Danish capital. This is a meeting established by French President Emmanuel Macron in the wake of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Among other things, that aims to drum up support for Ukraine amid this invasion. So it's quite rich that we saw this open clash between the two prime ministers. It occurred after a reporter asked Orban what the biggest threat facing the European continent was, to which he said economic stagnation. Tusk interjected and said it was Russia. This is a taste of what ensued.
We are stronger than Russia. Make some comparison and base your opinion on the facts. So we have more than 400 million people, yeah? Russia is 130 something. Look at the European GDP. It's like that. Russia is like that. We spend altogether 27 more on military spending than the Russians. So why we are afraid? We are stronger than they are. The question is whether we have...
I love him when he used my argument
whether we have leadership to come together and to defend our interests together.
Other leaders addressing the issue?
Yes, so we heard the Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen address the bloc by that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in a press conference at the tail end of those talks, where she stood next to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky when they were both asked this question about the unanimity of the EU regarding Ukraine's accession. Zelensky pointed out that he didn't understand why Orban was blocking Ukraine's bid so much, but he pointed out that Hungarians will go to the ballot box early next year. Frederiksen stated that peace for Ukraine can be guaranteed through unanimous strength among the EU allies. Here's what she said regarding support for Ukraine.
I will not allow one country, and I will certainly not allow Viktor Orban to take decisions upon the entire European future.
Yes, so what is clear is that there seems to be divisions within the European Union, particularly when it comes to handling the stubborn bloc from Budapest. But we know that there have been movements here, choreography spearheaded by European Council President Antonio Costa to move Ukraine's accession bid forward. However, it requires all 27 out of the 27 EU member states to vote on this. We're hoping for something more concrete in the next few weeks that Ukraine can be happy with.
That was Angela Skujins reporting from Copenhagen. Thank you very much, Angela. And from Denmark, we're moving to the Czech Republic. Czech voters are watching back-to-back debates that could decide the outcome of the country's parliamentary election this weekend. Yesterday, Andrej Babiš played it unusually calm, while Prime Minister Petr Fiala went on the offensive. Alexandra Bulenda is at TV Nova in Prague. Good evening, Alexandra. Can the debate turn the tables tonight with nearly a third of voters still undecided?
Well, this isn't just another night of television. I feel like it's a political battlefield. Now, here at TV Nova, Petr Fiala and Andrej Babiš is now clashing in a final debate of before the vote that is happening tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Now, yesterday at the TV debate for Prima News, Babiš was uncharacteristically calm, disciplined and even almost presidential, one could say. So he avoided outbursts. Critics say that he even dodged real answers, but then again, he softened his populist rhetoric. That's very common for him. So he still avoided questions on pension reforms and increase of inflation that Czechs are experiencing right now. And in contrast, Fiala came out swinging, attacking Babiš for skipping earlier debates that happened this week and pressing his case that the government has kept the Czech Republic safe inside NATO, firm on Ukraine and steady in Europe. So his message was stay on course, and we'll definitely see today and tonight if this message still prevails. Back to you. That was Alexandra Bulanda reporting from Prague. Thank you very much. Poland's debt is surging and the projections for the next few years don't look good. And it's not just the debt that could become a burden for Poland's government, but the cost of servicing it. With the yields on government bonds still high, interest payments on the debt could be set to soar. Maciej Wilowski has this report.
Poland's debt is expected to surge in the coming years. According to the government's projections published in its annual debt management strategy report, public debt could rise to 75% of gross domestic product by the end of the decade if left unchecked. But there's another indicator the government should be watching.
Debt servicing costs. So this is the most important indicator that should be observed and monitored and might impact fiscal policy. What is the cost of paying interest on debt?
Yields on government bonds, which reflect investors' perceived risk of holding Polish debt, determine those costs.
10-year bonds, so the bonds that mature in 10 years, have an interest rate of 5.5%, which is quite high.
That's just as high as in the summer of 2023, before the central bank first started cutting interest rates to stimulate the economy. Since then, the National Bank of Poland has cut interest rates 5 times, including 3 cuts this year. Bond investors also keep an eye on the budget deficit. At nearly 7% of GDP, Poland's deficit is the second highest in the European Union when measured as a share of the economy. That's more than double the 3% limit imposed under the EU's excessive deficit procedure. Surging defense spending since the Russian invasion of Ukraine has fueled that deficit. Such high deficits might only be sustainable if the economy is doing well.
It is possible to keep deficits at those levels for some time, especially when economy is growing quickly, which is happening right now.
That remains the case for now, with Polish GDP rising 3.4% on a yearly basis. High deficits and the lack of progress on reducing them have already prompted 2 credit rating agencies, Moody's and Fitch, to lower their outlook on Poland's debt. While the agencies stopped short of an actual downgrade, the government might not be so lucky next time.
We might face some negative feedback from the market, and maybe 2026 is going to mark decreases in the ratings of the Polish economy.
That could trigger a serious loss of confidence in the bond market.
And then we're going to see the yields of Polish bonds increasing because the risk is going to be greater.
Which in turn would make the government's debt burden greater.
That servicing cost will also be increasing, so every year we will need to spend more and more only on interest on those bonds.
While the government is attempting to bring down the deficit, progress has been slow thus far.
We are engaged in fiscal consolidation, but it is very gradual. Going from 7% to 3% will take a decade.
Political gridlock, including President Karol Nawrocki's power to veto any budget legislation passed by the government of Donald Tusk, could further delay the process. The government could also be reluctant to cut social spending ahead of parliamentary elections in 2027.
Honestly, for me, it's quite difficult to believe that the government would be brave enough to present fiscal consolidation measures, significant ones, before 2027.
With expenses and interest rates both uncomfortably high, the task of managing Poland's debt could become more burdensome for the government. For TVP World, I'm Maciej Wilowski.
Winter is already here, at least in the Polish Tatras mountains. But as the breathtaking views attract tourists to frozen peaks, rescue services remind visitors that the local weather can be very dangerous. Gabriela Jolonek invites you on a walk through the snowy landscapes of the Polish Tatra range.
There is 9 centimeters of white powder on the summit of Kasprowy Wierch, and according to meteorologists from the High Mountain Meteorological Observatory, it's already very cold.
Right now, there's less than 10 centimeters of snow, 9 centimeters to be exact. Winter conditions, -4 degrees Celsius plus wind, so you need to dress warmly.
However, tourists who reached the summit by cable car from Zakopane are delighted. Students who spent the last week here are happy that the weather brought back childhood memories, while some tourists saw snow for the first time.
Considering that I live in the Greater Poland region, where it rarely snows in the winter and certainly not in such quantities, it brings back childhood memories of building snowmen, snowball fights, and childish joy.
Beautiful. I've never been to the mountains in the winter before, and now I've also seen snow in the mountains.
I'm delighted. You can't see a thing, but it's good. It's warm, and despite the temperature, you can go without a jacket, so there's no problem. Just be careful. It's slippery.
The Tatra Volunteer Search and Rescue warns against difficult weather conditions and possible snow avalanches. Rescuers also remind people to wear weather-appropriate clothing.
Since the beginning of the week, the weather has deteriorated, slowly changing from summer to winter, and we're currently at an avalanche danger level of 1.
Due to climate change, autumn snowfall in Poland has been decreasing in recent years. 2023 saw the warmest September in the history of global measurements, while September 2024 came in second. However, snow can be seen in the mountains during autumn.
Now we observe another snowfall, but it will last till approximately Tuesday next week. It cannot be understood as a sign of early winter.
It seems that visiting the Tatra mountains this autumn we should be ready for the unexpected. Both autumn and winter season at once, but for sure with landscapes just like in fairy tales. For TVP World, Gabriela Jelonek.
The informal European summit in Copenhagen brought no breakthrough in crucial issues troubling the continent. There's no consensus on Ukraine's EU accession and no decision regarding Russia's frozen assets. We'll try to sum up the meeting in the Danish capital with our guest, Tomasz Włostowski, managing partner at EU Strategies and expert in international relations and economy, among many others. Now, let's start with Ukraine's EU accession. So, Viktor Orban has strongly opposed the idea, but that's nothing new. We could have expected that. Now, on the other hand, France has also torpedoed Antonio Costa's idea of changing the rules of admission to make it with the qualified majority rather than unanimity that we have at this moment. So, how to explain it?
Well, I think in general, Costa appreciated how important that condition for unanimity is for member states. I mean, member states guard it with their life. For them, the requirement of unanimity is a final guarantee that their interests are going to be protected. And this is not really about Ukraine. I mean, I think it's important to point that out. This is about protecting their interest in the future, because each of these member states, there is going to be a time in the future when unanimity is required, and they want to make sure when it's required that they will be able to...
Well, Greece also opposed the idea, but I guess that's because of Turkey. But why France on earth?
Well, France, I think it's also for foreign affairs in general, because they do see that once you sort of crack open the requirement for unanimity in all areas, then it's, well, in this area, I'm sorry, then it's going to continue in other areas as well. So I think they're quite adamant about protecting it in the future as well. And this is not only about Greece, but it's all about a number of other member states, Croatia with Serbia, for example, and so on. So there is a number of member states that want to protect this right of unanimity because it guarantees their crucial interest in the future.
Right. Now, another focal point of the meeting in Copenhagen was the so-called drone wall. And although all the members of this summit agreed that it is important, that we should have it, the decision is it will be built by 2030. Not now. I thought it was a very urgent matter, but it seems I was wrong. And they also couldn't agree who would be responsible for it, because it was the proposal of the European Commission that it will be Brussels, but apparently it will be not.
Well, exactly. I think this is another example of a topic that was quite controversial. It wasn't thoroughly prepared. You know, there's a couple of problems with it. One, I think, is that nobody fully understands what a drone wall is. I mean, it sounds nice. We sort of understand in general what it's supposed to do, but what exactly is it? I don't think anybody understands. That's number one. Number two, it's also, I think, clear that there are some member states that are more focused on this topic, and those are the member states here on the eastern border that have experienced Russian incursions. So the countries further to the west, they don't care that much about it, and they don't have the sense of urgency. And then there's also this moment, this aspect of who's going to benefit. Because essentially, if we're building something together, there's going to be European money in it. Well, who's going to sell the things needed for this drone wall? Is it going to be drone manufacturers in Poland, or is it going to be some IT companies, service companies from France, Germany, and so on? So deep behind this dispute is really, we need to clarify what it is, because President Macron did mention it's more complicated. I'm quoting from memory, but he says it's more complicated than this, because he wants to understand exactly how this is going to work and how French companies can benefit and how they can participate in this endeavor once we understand what exactly this drone wall is supposed to be.
So it's always about money. Talking about which, Europe is still guarding Russia's frozen assets. It's not using them to help Ukraine. Now, the main nation responsible for this state of affairs is apparently Belgium. And the Belgian Prime Minister claims he receives death threats apparently from Russia, because there are death threats warning him against unfreezing the money.
Well, okay, putting the death threats aside, I think this sort of narrows in on the key issue, which is that this sounds from far away like it's a European issue. But at the end of the day, it's not a European issue, because the money is in Belgium. Mm-hmm. And it's under sort of Belgian custodianship. So it's the Belgian law and the Belgian government that would have to actually do something. So once, it's easier for EU institutions and for some of the other member states to say, we need to confiscate this money, because it's not going to be them who's going to be confiscating it. It's going to be the Belgian government that's going to be confiscating it. And I think we can understand that they're concerned about the legal parameters. Here, I think it's key to emphasize that this issue is moving slowly. It hasn't gotten to where we would like it to be, but you can see that the staunch opponents of confiscating the assets or using the assets to generate money for Ukraine, that group is shrinking. We've seen Germany before has been very much against it. Now we see the German Chancellor is slowly accepting the idea of using the Russian assets to generate money. So that group is shrinking. Now I think the main issue is how to guarantee to the Belgian government that whatever happens afterwards, if there's a legal challenge, if the confiscation of the assets is struck down by the courts, that the Belgian government's not going to be on the hook for that. So we need to sort of mutualize somehow the reliability of the Belgian government, spread it over all the European institutions, spread it over member states. Essentially, Belgium needs to be guaranteed that they're not going to be left hanging at the end of it.
Talking about things that shrink. Russia has lost nearly 40% of its refining capacity. Well, it's asking now China to send some fuel back, I guess. Now, is the paper tiger, as put by Donald Trump, in big trouble?
Well, obviously Russia's in trouble. Obviously Russia in trouble, and we see signs of that everywhere. So I think, keeping that in mind, the latest push of, President Trump really, but also the sort of European institutions to focus on energy, and also the Ukrainian sort of focus on energy assets and energy infrastructure in Russia, obviously it's the right target. I mean, we know where Russia gets the money. It's from selling energy to the world. So we know that that's what needs to be targeted. The European Union has done everything it could, most of the things it could on the internal market. Now what we need to do is make sure that the Russian exports to the world, oil and petroleum products, which are sort of being sold above the price cap, are being, we can punish sort of those transactions that violate EU and international sanctions. And that's the focus of EU institutions and also of President Trump.
And lastly, very briefly, as Ukraine strikes Russian energy sites, could also Russia be planning to strike Polish energy infrastructure, as Donald Tusk, Polish Prime Minister, alarmed today that some Russian vessels were spotted near the underwater pipelines?
Well, look, obviously, I mean, just if we sort of zoom out a little bit, I mean, obviously Russia is going for an escalation. I mean, the drone incursions, the fighter jets, planes over Estonia, this is an escalation. So obviously that's the path. So, I would not exclude the possibility of this happening because, again, we're on an escalatory trajectory, basically, on the Russian side.
Tomasz Włostowski, Managing Partner at EU Strategies, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure as always. And thank you for watching and stay with us for more news and interviews here on TVP World.